All right, so I started this over because I was talking about this, but now I'm talking about sacred texts of the world. And if you are interested in one, you may not be interested in the other. So I thought this might make more sense. So I'm on lecture 25, Christian Testaments, Old and New. Many of the sacred texts of Christianity are not unique to Christianity. 3/4 of the Christian Bible is shared with Jews. The 27 short books of the New Testament have been grafted onto the Hebrew Bible, which Christians rename the Old Testament. And this is interesting because I don't think a lot of people realize this. I don't think a lot of Christians realize this. My husband was talking with a man a few years ago who is a part of a Christian group which believes in following both the Old and New Testament, and it's all true, right? So and it's not a lot of people, and so James was mentioning something about the Hebrew Bible, and the guy obviously had no clue that where the Old Testament came from. And I find it interesting how many people actually, they follow a religion, they really firmly, you can't convince them otherwise, and you wouldn't want to try, that they actually don't know what they are following. They don't know what they're a part of. They haven't really bothered to look into it. It doesn't take that long to figure it out. You just start reading, you start learning, and there you go. You have it. Anyway, the Old Testament isn't exactly the Hebrew Bible, also known as the Tanakh. The order of the internal books is different, and for some Christians, the Old Testament is longer than the Tanakh. The Catholic and Eastern Orthodox Bibles include the Apocrypha, books that were in the 3rd century BCE Greek translation of the Hebrew Scriptures, known as the Septuagint. But were not part of the Hebrew Tanakh. Christianity began in 1st century Palestine as a Jewish Reform movement. Jesus and earliest followers were Jews who spoke Aramaic and could read the Hebrew Scriptures. I have a question mark for that because I highly doubt that all of them could read the Hebrew Scriptures. But
the Jews?
The earliest followers of Jesus.
That'd be ridiculous.
It would be ridiculous to even think that they could.
I'm not even sure if all were apostles. I mean, they were fishermen.
Some of them. What do they know?
Fishermen.
They know fishing.
They were a variety. There was a tax collector. There came a variety. I don't think any of them were farmers, but.
Anyway, 88% of American households own a Bible, with an average of 4 Bibles per household. Deuteronomy 18, Moses spoke of future prophet. Isaiah's description of God's suffering servant in Isaiah 53 was about Jesus, say Christians. Septuagint, translation of the Hebrew Bible. Hebrew word Alma, which means young woman, in Isaiah 7:14 was translated as Parthenos, or virgin. So the verse reads, "The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son and will call him Emmanuel." Early Christians, reading the Greek version, read this as prophecy of Jesus' virgin birth, even though the Hebrew doesn't say that. Paul wrote letters 20 years after Jesus' death. He did not write Gospels. They were not intended as such. They were written to provide guidance or support to other Christians, so many like-minded people may find them useful or interesting. In 2nd century, Bishop Marcion concluded that the Jewish God of the Old Testament was an angry, vengeful deity who was entirely separate from and inferior to the God preached by Jesus. He suggested that Christians toss the Jewish scriptures and read a small canon of 11 books, Luke and 11 letters of Paul. Marcion was excommunicated. Rabbinical Judaism and Christianity are sister religions, says he. He doesn't consider Christianity child religion, or I guess a bastardization of Judaism. He considers them sister religions. Apocrypha, Old Testament books included in Greek Septuagint, but not in the Hebrew Masoretic text. Tobit, Judith, Sirach, and 1 to 2 Maccabees. Luther also doubted the reliability of Hebrews, James, Jude, and Revelation, so he moved them all to the end of the New Testament to signal his wariness about them. The turn back toward Greek sources occurred when the Greek-speaking Byzantine Empire fell to the Muslim invaders in 1453. Eastern Orthodox scholars with their Greek manuscripts fled to Europe, multiplying the number of manuscripts available into the hundreds. Today there are over 5,700 manuscripts. Most are just fragments. Codex Vaticanus, Codex Alexandrinus, Codex Sinaiticus. Mistakes in one are then copied, so you can sort accordingly. By late 19th century, it became obvious that there were some reliability issues. King James Version created, Catholics produced the Jerusalem Bible in 1966 and the New American Bible in 1970. British Christians published the New English Bible at that time. Evangelicals in America got the New International Version in 1978. New Revised Standard Version is what he recommends. Lecture 23, Gospels and Acts. Persian prophet Mani collected revelations personally. Muhammad's revelations put into book form within 20 years of his death. Muhammad followed Manichaeism at that time. Joseph Smith started his preaching career with Book of Mormon publication in 1830. Naki Yamariki, the founder of Tenrikyo, compiled her revelations in 1882. They circulated while she was still alive. Baha'u'llah, 1817 to 92, dictated the Baha'i scriptures to scribes and then personally edited them for publishing in the late 19th century. So his point is that there's been a trend, I suppose, for people to publish their Bibles within their time now, and people to follow the actual founder of the religion as that person lives. So, which is interesting. But, you know, I would love to zip ahead into the future and see if all of a sudden these people are gods. You know, because this is what we've seen through religions like, say, the Buddha. All of a sudden, there's a heaven. All of a sudden, there's a... Buddha is a god that you can pray to. He's a deity you can pray to. So it's interesting to see how religions change and how people see the founders, or if you want to call them prophets of religions. Now, I'm going to talk more about that later. James, do you want to add anything?
Not really.
Okay. Well, that's that then.